Hello everyone, this is an Evony guide video. I'm phatrahim from server 1425 plus 1526, and this is part 3 of taking hits from players 7 times bigger than you, the T1 defense. This video is made with input and knowledge from Pinkrock of server 1063, along with other players from the Evony Discord communities, especially the VIG Discord group. I will put up an invitation to that group on Discord, so please join us and get to know the community and people from different servers, different continents. Join the discussions and ask any questions you might have and improve your experience in Evony. Make sure to watch parts 1 and 2 before watching this video, especially if you're a smaller player that would like to build the T1 trap and have a chance to stand up to bigger players and fend off their attacks. And regarding the example that we went through in part 1, yes, a lot of people have asked me to show more details on that battle report due to the fact that I reinforced my teammate here and helped him in this defense, as you can see. So I will be talking about that at the end of this video. And to this person here, I just want to say it's nothing personal. I've been in this situation. A lot of us have been in this situation. And many times we end up burning an opponent, but not before losing at least the first power exchange. So again, nothing personal. It's just part of the experience, and it's just something we can all learn from. I'm putting up the call again for anyone who has access to PowerPoint who would like to translate this guide into more languages. Please contact me on Discord if you're interested. So in the last video, we talked about the subordinate or sub or vessel cities, especially how the debuffs apply there. And for this video, I've added more things to talk about. However, this video will be very long, and so we're just going to focus on the first bullet point here, comparing T1s of different troop types and why we're recommending T1 mounted for free-to-play or light spenders. So we'll begin by comparing T1 mounted with T1 ground. And we'll start with the reasoning of the cost of resources, or RSS. So why should beginners use T1 mounted and not T1 ground? Well, in terms of how much it costs to make these troops, look at the cost here. Okay, and I know that's a bit small, so let me just point those out for you. Okay, so to make a single T1 mounted troop, it costs 80 food and 80 lumber. And for a single T1 ground troop, it costs 160 food and 0 lumber. So twice as much food. Now, you might look at this and think, well, they basically cost the same when you don't look at the type of RSS. But here's the problem. You're going to take twice as long to get the food that you need, and so you're going to wait longer to make your T1 ground wall. Now you might also be thinking, well, that's okay. I'll just focus on getting more food and not so much the lumber. But the problem with that is food and lumber are distributed evenly in the game. And so if you want to get food faster than lumber, well, you're basically spending money at that point, right? And there's no need for that, just to do T1 ground. So it's either that or you just have to wait much longer to have your T1 wall ready if you're using ground. And for this reason, we recommend T1 mounted. Now let's talk about the options that we have in terms of debuffing ranged troops versus debuffing mounted troops of the enemy. So let's start with our setup here. This is our keep, 500 million power. We are ghosting or shadowing or hiding our high-tiered mounted troops. Down here we have our layers of 50,000 as we talked about before. And we have two options for a T1 wall, either 100 million T1 mounted or 100 million T1 ground, each with the flat refines. And here is our enemy with 4 billion power, and he has his own layers of 1,000 that he sends with his attack march. And then the main part of his attack is the 2 million high-tiered ranged troops, or archers. Now, before we answer how we would do against this opponent, let's first look at the counter troops and the troops attacking order. Now, I got these screenshots from another YouTuber. I believe his YouTube name is btech plus BBA. And in these screenshots, it shows which troops will counter which troops. Okay? So you can see that archers will counter mounted troops, ground troops counter archers, and secondarily siege. Mounted troops counter ground troops, and secondarily they counter siege. And then siege counters each other, and secondarily they can counter archers. And then you can also see the troops attacking order here. Okay? So if you go inside your city and you click on your stables, and you click on train, and you see the portrait of the mounted troop, in the top right here, you can see more information on how mounted troops will counter ground troops and the advantage they have, and also the disadvantage that they have when they go into battle against archers. Okay? And the same thing for ranged troops. Here, if you click on the archer camp. The same thing for ground troops. Okay? And same thing for siege machines. Okay, so back to this, these two screenshots here. This is very important to know, and I recommend that beginners review this regularly. So for our example here, let's focus on the fact that archers will counter mounted troops or calves, and ground troops will counter archers or ranged troops. Okay? So back to our setup here. If our opponent is attacking us with ranged troops, then which of these two T1 walls do you think will work? So we have the T1 mounted trap and the T1 ground trap. Okay, so the answer is both of them will actually work against enemy archers. And this in spite of the fact that archers are the weakness of mounted troops, or calves. In other words, they counter calves. And the reason for that is, as you might have noticed, and as we talked about before, we have a lot of options for debuffing enemy archers without spending too much money. So it's very easy if you're a free-to-play or light spender to find the generals and put together the equipment to debuff archers. And on top of that, we know that ground troops are the counter to ranged troops. Okay. Now let's compare this again, except this time our enemy is sending us high-tiered mounted troops. So now what do you think would happen? Okay, so as you can see, our T1 mounted trap, so our T1 calves will hold up, but the T1 ground will not. And this has to do with the fact that if you're a free-to-play or a light spender, you don't have as many options when it comes to debuffing enemy mounted troops. So if you want to sufficiently debuff enemy mounted troops the same way you can debuff enemy archers, well, at that point, you can't be free-to-play or light spender anymore. You would have to move to mid-level spending, so you would be spending more money. And so for this reason, we don't recommend T1 ground. For free-to-play and light spenders, we recommend still the T1 mounted trap. Okay. Now, I was going to talk about another reason, that being the difference in speed of the mounted troops and ground troops. However, I will not be saying this as a reason why we should do T1 mounted versus T1 ground. It's just something that I think is interesting to talk about because there are different opinions on whether the numbers are being shown correctly in the game. So what I'm talking about is shown here. So here we see the stats for our mounted troop T1 and also the T1 of ground troop. The text is very small again, but I'll just point it out for you. Okay, and if we were to believe these numbers, it would tell us that our T1 mounted troops are actually faster than our T1 ground troops. The problem is that there's a lot of debate as to whether the numbers being shown here are the true and accurate representation of the speed of these two troop types in the battle mechanics. Now, if we also factor in that archers will always have a shooting distance or range of 500 from tier 1 to tier 14, and I haven't heard any debates about that. Well, if the numbers shown here are real and they're true and accurate, then it would tell us that our T1 mounted troops should move in faster and be able to hit the enemy archers, whereas the T1 ground troops would kind of lag behind and not move in fast enough, but still move into range of these archers, and thus they would get hit without being able to hit back, and thus take more damage. Again, I don't know, right? For all we know, maybe they both move at the same speed, or maybe the ground troops are moving faster. I'm not going to say which way it is, Um, but it is something interesting to think about. And it actually makes a really good topic of discussion in the Discord communities. So again, join us there and maybe we can talk more about this. So now we will talk about T1 archers. And we will talk about debuffing enemy ground troops. And we know that ground troops are the counter to archers. So this time, our opponent is sending us a ground attack march. And so here are our two T1 walls. We have T1 mounted and T1 ranged or archers. So which ones do you think will do well against a high-tiered ground attack? Okay, so the 100 million T1 mounted will do pretty well against this ground attack. In large part due to the fact that mounted troops counter ground troops. So whoever is sending this really wasn't thinking. Okay? Whereas the range troops, the T1 range troops, are actually weak against the enemy ground troops. Okay? And even with the attack order being kind of funny, which I haven't yet talked about that, but there is kind of a weird attack order when it comes to ground troops. They will still move in quickly enough and take out your T1 archer wall. Okay? And again, I know this is small, but again, review these screenshots, and if you can see closely there, you will see that ground troops do have a bonus against range troops. However, they don't attack them until the third round. They'll attack enemy ground, then mounted troops, which they are weak against, before finally getting to the thing that they're good at, which is enemy range troops. In spite of all this, these ground troops will overcome these obstacles and take out your T1 range trap. And a big reason for this is, as a free-to-play or a light spender, you just don't have many options when it comes to debuffing enemy ground troops. And so, in spite of the counter troops or the attack order, an enemy with strong enough ground troops, strong enough ground buffs, will cut through your defenses and they will cut down your T1 archers. And if you want to get more debuffs against enemy ground troops, well, at that point, you are moving at least into mid-level spending. And if you're doing that, I would still recommend doing T1 mounted troops because you can still build on that and improve on that the more you spend. Now let's talk about debuffing enemy siege machines. Okay, so this time our opponent is sending us high-tiered siege machines, and we have our T1 mounted trap and our T1 archer trap. So how do you think these two will do against enemy siege machines? Well, as you can see, the T1 archer trap will not do well against our enemy's siege machines. So one big reason for that has to do with the shooting distance of each troop. So, for example, let's look at the siege machines or catapults. Okay, and let's see here. Okay, so for our T1 catapults, the range is 1400. When we get to level 5 catapults, I believe that says 1556. For T11 siege, it's 1867. And when we get to T14, it becomes 2178. Now, how does this compare to the shooting distance of ranged troops or archers? Well, as you can see, from Tier 1 to Tier 14, they all have the same shooting distance. It's 500. And again, I haven't heard anyone debating this. And what does that mean in this battle scenario? Well, first of all, your enemy's siege machines are going to shoot further than your T1 archers, meaning they can shoot at them, but they cannot shoot back. So you're taking hits without being able to hit back. And on top of that, because of the attack order, as you can see here, they will get to hit your T1 archer wall sooner. So again, if we look at, say, T11 siege with a shooting distance of 1867 against our T1 archer trap with a range of 500, basically we don't stand a chance. And again, because we're talking to free-to-play and light spenders, we really don't have much chance of debuffing enemy siege machines. If that's what you want to do, you have to start spending more money. So again, not something we recommend for free-to-play or light spenders. Once again, stick to the T1 mounted trap. Okay, and now we come to T1 Siege and why we shouldn't do it. Now I've colored this one in red because there are just so many reasons why this is such a bad idea. Unless you're spending so much money, but then at that point, why not just do something else? But anyways, let's look at how T1 Siege would do against enemy archers or ranged troops. Okay, so same setup, except now we have a T1 Siege trap with flats, T1 Siege flats, and as we noted before, their shooting distance or their range is 1400, and our enemy is sending us archers with a shooting distance of 500. Now, in this scenario, the archer attack of our enemy will be plus 1200%. So let's say this is a person who is also kind of new, but they just wanted to build lots of troops. They spent a little more money than you, and they didn't quite know what they were doing. So they have at least archer attack over 1,000. Okay, that's fine. So how are we going to do against them? Well, as it turns out, we can hold them off. And again, if we look at the counter troops and the attack order, yes, it is true. Siege machines will secondarily counter archers. So, yeah, okay. They will prioritize attacking them after taking out enemy siege. And on top of that, the archers will not prioritize attacking enemy siege machines until last. They go through the 3 other troop types first. Okay? And so again, I've highlighted this here or just pointed it out for you to see. Siege machines will attack enemy siege and then enemy archers as the second priority, before finally going on to ground troops and then mounted troops. And again, a reminder of the shooting distance for the siege machines. So as you can see, it's different depending on which tier of siege machine that you're looking at. So for example, 1400 for the T1, 1556 for T5, 1867 for T11, and 2178 for T14. And again, for the archers, it's all the same, 500. Here, 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 and here. Okay. Now, this scenario is against an opponent with not so great archer attack. And again, here's a reminder of the counter troops and the attack order, and the difference in the shooting distance. And basically, T1 siege machines with flats will shoot at the enemy archers first due to their greater range. And so if your enemy's archers have less than 1500% attack, you should be okay. But now, what happens if our enemy suddenly has better archer attack, right? So in this case, we're making it 2000% archer attack. What happens now? Well, oddly enough, it fails, meaning our T1 siege defense will now fail against these stronger enemy archers. So a big reason for this is the refines that are available to our T1 siege machines and how good they are. So I've opened a refining page, as you can see here. The text is small, so I will crop and zoom in. So you can see for mounted troop HP, well, this is a gold refine, so the number we got here was 1930, but we could have gotten from 1 to 1978. Here's an option for ground, 2605, but we can go from 1 to 2924. So that's a pretty good range of numbers we can get. But what about for siege machines? Well, to answer this question, let's look at this chart, and here we can see what are the possible refines we can get for each troop type on attack, HP, and defense. And as you can see, while mounted and ground and even ranged have pretty good refining numbers available to them, look at the numbers available for siege. These are very bad. And so coming back to this example, and keeping in mind these terrible numbers that we have for siege flats, they are so bad that even enemy archers can take us out as long as their buffs are high enough. So over 1500%, that's when you need to start watching out. Now, let's talk about how the T1 siege defense would do against enemy ground and enemy mounted troops. Okay, so now our opponent is sending us high-tiered mounted troops to attack. Um, and again, it's debatable whatever the mounted speed is, but uh, we do know that they are fast enough to come in and attack our T1 siege machines. So what do you think would happen? We would lose, of course. But why? Well, let's consider the fact that um, mounted troops and siege machines will attack each other last. Okay? So they prioritize other troops and then they prioritize each other last. But again, the enemy mounted troops will move in quick enough. And again, look at these refines that we have. They are so bad. So with these two things combined, our T1 siege will fail. Because the T1, I'm sorry, the enemy mounted troops will move in quick enough and they will overcome those terrible flats that we have for our siege machines. And it's a similar situation for enemy ground troops. Again, I can't say what the speed is for sure, but we do know they are fast enough. They will move in quick enough. And they do attack enemy siege machines last. But still, they'll move in quick enough, overcome those really bad flat refines, and they will take out our T1 siege trap. Now let's look at enemy catapults or siege machines. So we have a siege T1 trap. They're hitting us with siege. Let's see what happens. So now our opponent is going to send us T11 siege machines. Now, in the world of Evony, we call this small siege. That's what we call it. T11 siege is small siege. It has a shooting range, a shooting distance, or a range of 1867, which is obviously higher than the 1400 that that the T1 has. And let's not even talk about skill books with range bonuses and things like that, because if we put one on, they'll put one on. Very simple. So, of course, we're going to fail against this attack. And just a reminder again, we're defending with T1 Siege with a shooting distance of 1400, and they're hitting us with T11 Siege with more distance of 1867. Okay, and with that in mind, they will shoot further and they will destroy us. And we won't even have a chance to hit back because we're not within range. Right? We cannot shoot far enough. Now, some people in the Discord communities have said, well, you can make a T1 Siege work. And to that, I have to say, well, you have to spend a lot of money to make it work. And if you're going to spend more money, if you decide, you want to move from free to play or light spending over to mid-level or high spending, then why not just do the T1 mounted? Because again, it's more versatile and it's very easy to build on. And by the way, it would take way too much money to build on a T1 Siege to make it viable. So unless you plan on spending like a Saudi oil prince, I'm going to say no to this. Now let's talk about the cost of RSS, specifically the stone. So if you recall earlier, we looked at the difference in the cost to make a T1 mounted versus a T1 ground. Now let's compare that with T1 siege. Now, as you can see here, the cost is 100 lumber. Okay, that's not bad. But then it also costs us 60 stone. Now, the problem here is free-to-play and light spenders will accumulate stone more slowly, and that is stone that you need for other things, such as upgrading your buildings. And so why waste stone on T1 Siege when you could use it to upgrade your buildings? Either that or you're spending more money just to get the stone that you need. And if you're going to spend more money, why not just do T1 mounted? Because whether you're free to play, light spender, mid or heavy spender, or what we call a whale, you can never go wrong with T1 mounted. It's very versatile and very easy to build on for your defense. And as a bonus, I'd like to try... Actually, no, I don't want to try, and I want to tell you not to try splitting your flat refines either. There are people who do this. For whatever reason, do not try this. For example, again, I talked about it in the last video. We had a guy, he did half T1 ground flats and half T1 siege flats. And as far as I know, he still hasn't recovered from it. One thing that this fails is the main point of T1 flats is that you can focus all those flats on one troop type. But now you're splitting it across two, so you're spreading yourself too thin. And another thing to think about is you need to save yourself the time and the money, depending how much you're putting in, because recovering from something like this takes a lot of both. Okay? It'll be tedious and difficult to change your setup. So please do not try splitting your flats. Just focus on one, and again, make that one the T1 mounted. Okay? Okay, so let's finally talk about this. So in part 1 of this guide, I gave the example of our teammate here during a recent SVS, and he had a successful defense against this person. Again, no offense to you. We've all, or a lot of us have been through this, and it's just part of the experience. But yeah, he won the defense, and he had a very good power exchange against someone much bigger than him. As you can see there. But as you can tell, yes, he had reinforcements. And I will go over this now. I was the one reinforcing him, and as I stated before, I gave him about 50,000 of each layer, and the reason for that was because excuse me, the reason for that was because I felt his keep was not ready yet. He did not yet have layers of 50,000, which I was really recommending to him. He also didn't have the minimum of 100 million T1 troops. He had over 50 million, but not over 100 million. And so I just wanted to give him some thicker layers. And here they are. And you can see how they did. Here, 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 and here. Okay, and so the total power of the layers that I sent to him added up to about 50 million. And our friend here was about 350 million at the time. So if he had his setup complete on time, he probably would have been around 400 million. So so that would have led to a similar exchange, I would think. Having said that, yes, I am making these videos in the hopes that people can defend on their own, but at the same time, you also need to learn to work on a team, and it's okay to take reinforcements from other people. And I do want to apologize. I didn't mean to mislead anyone and think that this guy did it all on his own. Well, for all intents and purposes, he did. I just felt like he wasn't ready. So that's why I gave him the layers. Now, interestingly, when I went to sleep during that SVS, he woke up again in the middle of the night and kept going around and finding bait to lure in and win power exchanges without my help. And surprisingly, even without those complete layers, he still had some pretty good power exchanges, and he ended up getting his wings, just barely getting into the top 5 at the very end. And so congratulations to our friend here. He has his SVS blue wings, and he will be sitting on the throne in the next little while. But again, I hope that clarifies any questions or any confusion. And I just want to remind everyone again, this video is from May 2025. So as always, things can change from this time into the future. And so please do not implement any advice shown here without thinking about it for yourself, checking the numbers for yourself, and talking to other people in your alliance, in your server, in the Discord communities, especially VIG Discord. Yeah, so just think about it first before implementing anything you see here. So once again, I'm phatrahim from server 1425 plus 1526. You can find me on Discord under the username phatrahim. Special thanks to Pinkrock from server 1063 and other Evony players from VIG Discord and other Discord groups who contributed to this video. So that will be all for now, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.